Hey everybody, it's Marie Haynes here, just bringing you up to date with things that have changed in the last couple of weeks in terms of Google and everything that you need to know for SEO. So if you're new to this format, I have a newsletter that you can reach at mariehaynes.com/newsletter. And we have a free and a paid version of the newsletter. So what we're going to talk about today is most of the information that's covered in the free version, which will basically keep you updated with any changes that Google has made that you need to keep on top of. The paid version has a whole whack of stuff in it this month, or this week I should say, and a lot of it is helping you to just make better content. There's a link building tip in there, lots of stuff about local SEO as well. Let's get started with algorithm updates. So last time we did this, we had a whole whack of things to report for December. If you missed that episode and you're trying to figure out what the dates are in December where Google made big algorithm changes, you can go to mariehaynes.com/algo, A-L-G-O, and that'll take you to a list that I keep updated. Every time I update my newsletter, I also write in that list the dates of changes that were significant. So we know that Google makes changes several times a day, but there's always are certain changes that are much more important or seem to have affected a lot of sites. The good news is that there hasn't really been that much significant change in January, or early February for that point. So there is some possible talk about January 29th to January 30th perhaps being a significant update. I went back through all of the sites that I track, which is quite a few sites, and I think I saw one site that maybe had a slight increase, but it was debatable whether that was a seasonal increase, and so I'm not seeing a whole lot at this point. I did have somebody comment on my Algo list saying that they felt that there were changes that affected big pharma sites. So if you run a big site that has to do with pharma, it might be worthwhile checking to see if your Google organic traffic has increased or decreased at this time. And if it has, if you can let me know, either by leaving a comment on my newsletter or shooting me an email, that would be great, because it'll help me to understand what types of sites were affected on this date. So I'll keep you updated, hopefully in the next episode, if we can see any significant changes that are obvious at this point. There's a lot of talk about Google Search Console Beta, and I know a lot of you were waiting desperately to get it, and now pretty much everybody should have it. I know Google was spamming people, it seemed, in sending out messages saying that you now have the new Search Console, and if you have several versions, if you have your HTTP and your HTTPS version, and maybe your www version as well, verified in Google Search Console, you probably got a lot of these messages, just like I did. And now Google's also sending out messages from Beta saying you have problems in your index coverage report, and maybe we'll get into that more in the next episode. The point is, though, that Google's sending us a lot of messages, and I know a lot of people are complaining that Google can get away with spamming us, but if we try to do it, it's a problem. In reality, though, all of these sites, I mean, the reason why I got so many of these is because I'm on a lot of websites for Search Console, and I think most of the people who got this email really wanted to see the email. So what does it mean to have access to the beta Search Console? There are a few things. If you're a paid member, I break down some of the ways that I use Search Console right now in terms of the beta console, but there are a lot of things that are missing as well. I don't see a place to download links. There's no fetch and render. A lot of things are missing from beta, so it's not a standalone product that you can use just on its own. You still need to be using the regular Search Console for most things. If for some reason you did not get an email, you probably still have access. You can go to this URL here, and there'll be a drop-down menu that will show the sites that you have access to the new Search Console, and it's worth looking around. I really like what they've replaced. It's not called Search Analytics anymore, it's called the Performance Report. I really like how they do that, and it's really good to look at certain keywords and see, oh, this page is ranking for this keyword, but I'm not actually that well optimized for that keyword, and you can make changes there. Again, the paid version has a few tips on how I use that. If you're using WordPress and you have an AMP plugin, this is something to take note of. It looks like there are some changes, and when there are updates, it might not update your plugin, so that's worth looking into. Featured snippets. So the featured snippet algorithm is one that just keeps changing, and we are having decent success at winning some clients some featured snippets, although in all honesty it's challenging. We have some clients where we make a few changes and boom, they win a bunch of featured snippets, and we have others where we're making changes that really should make a difference and we're not winning all of them as we expected. And so this makes sense because Google has said, Gary Ish at PubCon in the fall had said, the featured snippet algorithm is constantly changing and they're trying to make it better and better. So this article by Danny Sullivan was talking about some of the changes that they've made, and now featured snippets can potentially be videos. I think we've all seen those things where Google takes a clip from a YouTube video and finds the exact spot in the video that answers your query, which is mind-blowing to me. They're doing some things to, it says Google will weigh the authoritativeness of a website more heavily in order to determine whether or not you get a featured snippet. And this is actually important when we're looking at, so we do a lot of traffic drop assessments, so basically trying to determine this website was performing well in search and now it's not, so let's figure out why. If you lose a bunch of your featured snippets, sometimes that can mean that Google has reassessed your site and has now considered it a lower quality site. So if you've lost a bunch of featured snippets, that can be a sign that you're actually considered lower quality. We usually advise people to look for the things that are in the quality raters guidelines. There are, and this right here, as identified in the Quality Raters Guidelines, that's a quote from Danny Sullivan in the article, I believe. But that's something that we've been saying for a while now, is that if you lose your featured snippets, there's something going on, usually. So we're still going to be chasing that algorithm. It's a whole lot of fun when you do win some featured snippets, and in most cases it results in an increase in traffic. So as we get more information on what seems to be working, I'll pass that on to you. Speaking of Danny Sullivan, I would recommend, if you're on Twitter at all, that you find the Google Search Liaison. This is something that Danny Sullivan has created because his personal account has a lot of cool photos and stuff, but are not really related to Google. And so this is something where he can post things just to say, look, Google wanted to inform you that this is happening in search. There aren't a lot of tweets in there just yet, but I do think that everybody should be following this account. This was interesting, these actions. I haven't dug into this too much, but I know Stone Temple had something that they've created, and then we've got a link to some articles here. The whole idea is that it's for people who are using Google Assistant on their Android phones or Google Home, and there are ways that, especially if you have a podcast, a recipe site, or a news site, that you can actually create actions so that people can ask Google something and get a response directly from your website. So this looks like something interesting, and I think it's something we'll probably look into for some of our clients in the future. Wanted to include this information on Ahrefs in terms of domain rank. So most of you know that Moz has a score called Domain Authority, and I think they're looking at actually changing that score. I know Rand Fishkin was tweeting about whether do we want to see DA based just on links or based on other signals? And my answer was probably other signals, but it depends on how accurate you can make those. Now, Ahrefs has made some changes so that previously domain rank in Ahrefs was based on, as far as I understand, solely links. And so you could have a site that had thousands and thousands of spammy links, and it would have a very high DR score. And so they've changed it so that's not the case. But what I'm hearing is that a lot of people actually use these numbers in their SEO reporting. And if you've reported that, your Ahrefs domain rank has gone up this month and up the next month, and then all of a sudden it's down to half of what it was, that's because the whole scores are changing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your site has any problem. We don't put a whole lot of stock in domain rank and domain authority. What I tend to use them for is just in showing the vast discrepancies. So if we have a client that's not ranking well and all of their competitors have significantly higher domain rank and domain authority, then we can say, look, even though, I mean, we do need to create better content to rank better, but you're having an uphill battle because your competitors have a much better link profile. So we do look at it, but I would never turn down a link from a site just because it is a low DA or DR score. So be careful you're not putting too much emphasis on these metrics. There's some neat stuff for if you have a site that has questions and answers in it. Glenn Gabe had pointed out here that now some of these sites are getting some markup in the Google results. And so if you have a Q&A site that measures, that kind of tells you which answers are the best answer, you can use schema to mark this up. And that's something that will possibly appear in the search results, which is kind of cool. I did another podcast on how we use the Quality Raters guidelines to help sites improve, and I had a really great time on the Sure Oak podcast, so there's a link in my newsletter to where you can hear me do that. It's a little bit different than what I did on the Moz podcast. I really do think that you'll get some good tidbits from that. Also, I'm speaking at a few events in the next couple of months, so if you're going to be at PubCon Austin, Engage in Portland, or SMX in San Jose, then I would love to meet you, and you can come up and say hi. These are my first two talks are going to be about links, and we're going to do an interactive quiz to determine, is this a good link or is it a bad link? I think you'll find it quite a lot of fun. And then the talk in San Jose is with Glenn Gabe. I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to talk all about the changes that have happened in Google's algorithms over the last year or so, and give you some real life examples of cases that have either improved or seen problems in relation to these algo changes. We had a little bit of stuff in the newsletter too about local SEO. I thought that this was interesting. If you're a restaurant, you can now add your menu to your Google My Business profile, which is pretty cool because a lot of restaurants don't have the greatest website, but you can still allow people to see your menu in Google My Business, which is worth looking into as well. And I included this as well. I mean, this is not news to most of you who are using Google Posts, but Google Posts are something that appear in your knowledge graph, and underneath you can have, it's almost like, you know, free real estate in the SERPs. And I see a lot of people are still not using it. Google Posts, they're live for about a week, and then you get a notification from Google saying, can you should update your post. This is something that Matt McGee noticed, is that when you post a Google post, it goes live almost immediately. And so this is something, if you're doing any local SEO, I would say that this should be a part of your regular work that you do each month, is make sure that the Google post is kept up to date, especially if you're doing something seasonal. It's great to add something in there. I added this as well, Chrome DevTools, so you can get this by inspecting an element. I think Command-Shift-I on a Mac will open up DevTools. And it used to be that when you looked at the phone versions, they were all very, very old. I think it was iPhone 5. And so now the newer iPhones are in here. And what this allows you to do is look at your site or your competitor's site and see how does it render on an iPhone. And this is not just for web design. This is something that's important for SEO as well. Because if your pages are not rendering properly, or perhaps, I mean, we had one client just a couple weeks ago where their button to buy now just was not performing on certain phones. And so that can certainly hurt conversions as well. So that's kind of a neat thing that they're doing that. I started adding a section on SEO jobs in my newsletter. I'm not going to post every job under the sun, but there are a couple of jobs that I really would highly recommend. Some of the people listed in here are some of my favorite people in SEO, and if you have the opportunity to work with them, that I would jump at it for sure. Speaking of which, my team and I are probably hiring someone soon. So if you are in the Canada area, near Ottawa in Canada, and you're interested in a really cool SEO job, then I'll have more information on this probably in the next newsletter. But feel free to contact me if you're looking for a job. And so let's see, the last thing, Google is hiring WordPress developers, which is pretty interesting that Google is investing a lot of time and money into helping people create good WordPress sites. So I highly recommend WordPress, and I think if you do things properly, it's a really good SEO tool. I've got a bunch of articles here that if you're a paid subscriber, my team and I have spent a good amount of time just summarizing a lot of these articles, because the people who write these articles for SEO, thank you for doing it. You're helping to keep us informed, and hopefully I can help the rest of you in cutting down the time so you don't have to spend hours and hours reading this. We put in, I want to say, about 15 to 20 hours every 2 weeks just creating the newsletter and reading these articles so that you guys don't have to. And so that's hopefully helpful to you. And if you're enjoying this, I would love to hear the feedback. The paid members of my newsletter get a bunch of stuff this month. I won't go into it all, but you can see some of it here. And that's about all that we have for now. So we'll see if we have a busy February. Wouldn't surprise me if we have some updates. I think historically we've had some significant updates in February. We're coming up to February 7th. So February 7th was the day that I believe, February 7th, 2017 was a day where Google updated EAT in their algorithms, and it was significant. A lot of sites were hit then. So we'll see if this February brings more changes. And that's it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. I'm happy to take any feedback, either constructive criticism or praise would be good as well. And good luck with all the rankings in your site.